Hello and welcome to another edition of Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham, where Team Needham discusses everything healthcare. I'm your host, Shawn Needham, along with my wonderful wife, Janet, and we are streaming live from the Moses Lake Professional Pharmacy podcast studio. And we are super excited to be talking about why you should not look to politicians for fixing your health. Janet, do you want to start?
Yep. The buzzword is big pharma, big food, big industry pretty much is kind of ruining our health and causing and promoting obesity and illnesses. And while I do think that they play a hand in it, Shawn and I really want to empower you to realize that it's really in your own hands. It's your health, it's your body. So you need to do the things and learn the things that are going to make you healthy. And I really truly believe that if we vote with our pocketbook and our actions, that we can turn our health care around in the United States. And I don't even look to physicians anymore to help us do that unless they live it and walk it themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good introduction to our show. And next week, Tuesday, United States, it's a very important election day, as they all are. You know, that we get to use our constitutional right to vote for individuals and to vote for laws, and maybe not laws is not the right term, but initiatives and things like that, depending on the state. But don't look to politicians to save you. They are not going to. In fact, they ruin things. So when we talk about big food, big pharma, big industry, any of that stuff, you got to realize that the agencies that control them, let's talk about big pharma, for instance, the agencies that control big pharma, mostly the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, they are owned by big pharma. It's called agency capture, and they are literally an extension of big pharma. Most of their funding comes from big pharma, not the taxpayers. So you can't expect them to fix the big pharma problem. And what is the big pharma problem? Well, the big pharma problem, and as pharmacists, we absolutely know this, is that there's a drug for everything, a pill for every ill. One of our great friends, Robbie Raw, who's a nurse in New York, talks about a pill for every ill. You know, whether it be reflux, whether it be type 2 diabetes, whether it be hypertension, high blood pressure, or high cholesterol, there's always a pill for that. So they're good at finding, some kind of symptom of some kind of decreased metabolic health, like hypertension, and then making a number out of it, and then using a drug to treat those numbers. So, do blood pressure drugs lower blood pressure? Absolutely, they do. But you have to ask yourself this: why do you have high blood pressure in the first place? That's what you really have to ask yourself.
So there's appropriate times and places, I think, to use the tools of medicine to heal ourselves or to help the process. But when it's a chronic situation, it probably results more in our own actions and in our own habits. And that's something I think that we've tried to sell through the media and Hollywood, that, we're victims of our genes and we're victims of everything around us. And that's simply not true. I don't ever want to have to be told that I'm a certain type of disease just because I choose to be. That's not very liberating. And in most cases, you've probably heard us talk about this before, that, what we do in our day-to-day life really matters. It makes more sense to focus on things that we control than what somebody else is trying to control.
So if you really honestly believe that big food, big pharma has been captured by government agencies, whether it be the USDA or the FDA, then having more government intervention is going to make it worse. I talk about it in my book about how the government ruined healthcare and how to fix it. If you believe the government ruined healthcare, which I absolutely believe, if you haven't read my book, it's a quick read, 120 pages, should take you a couple hours. It will give you the history of how the government ruined healthcare. And I absolutely believe that. So if you believe that, then how can more government intervention fix it? The only thing that can fix it is actually less government intervention. And like Janet said, vote with our pocketbooks. I'm a free market person. I believe in free markets. I believe in liberty. I believe when people have the ability to make their own choices without being coerced, in a true free market, and it's transactional. The seller benefits and the buyer benefits. I believe that fixes pretty much any problem, and the only thing the government can do is to ruin that. So anytime they get involved, they ruin that. They've done it with healthcare. Look at how everybody talks about how expensive healthcare is. Sure, healthcare is expensive when you get the government involved. You want to see healthcare get expensive? Wait until it's free. That's when things get really expensive, when somebody else is paying the bill. So when consumers are actually in charge and they vote with their pocketbook, prices go down, service goes up, and quality goes up. It's the same in healthcare. It's the same in food. So guess what? If you don't like that big food is trying to poison us and you believe that, then stop buying their poison. Yep. It's really that simple.
Right. And so easy tips that Shawn and I try to live by is we try to buy as local as we can. That includes our meat. We buy from a local rancher, so we know it's grass-fed. We also know the people that are selling it to us, so they answer to us directly. And that might not be the case for everybody, but the more local you buy, the better odds are you're going to have better service and better quality. And then we work really hard to stay away from anything that's in a box or processed. Obviously, sometimes that does happen, but for the majority of the time, we aren't buying the big cereal boxes. We're not buying the stuff that's in the middle of the store. So stay out of the middle of the store and you should be good. In fact, I have this rule where if I have to grab something in there, I leave my cart at the end and walk down that aisle and turn around and come back. So I don't put things in there. I do it specifically for that reason. So I'm not loading up my cart with things that aren't real. And we say this all the time. If it doesn't rot, you probably shouldn't eat it. It makes sense, right? Because anything that is from the earth should have some place that it's going to break down with bacteria or mold. So if that isn't going to happen to the product, you should probably leave it alone.
Yeah, and let me tell you, that little idea of what she does in the middle of the aisles in the grocery store, it makes it a lot harder to find your wife when she shops like that. just to let you know, but it is a good tip. So in the news, there's been a lot of talk about big food, big pharma, and these agency captures, mostly because of RFK Jr. And I respect RFK Jr. for many of his policies, including those. I think he's one of the most well-spoken, one of the smartest guys that I have ever heard speak. I mean, obviously he's a Kennedy. He was raised politically in a political family. He was, I think third or fourth generation in politics. So, obviously he's a very smart guy. The dates that he remembers, the people that he remembers in these agencies is incredible. And I like that he's bringing it to the forefront that, there is a problem. So, and I do like the idea that he thinks one of the fixes to the problems is, if you work for the FDA or the NIH or the CDC or, agencies like that, be fearful of your job, because if Trump gets elected and RFK gets in, that's one of his goals, is to get rid of a lot of those people in those agencies. And so they don't have as much power. Remember, those agencies really only have the power that Congress gives them. But many times they have went well and beyond the power that is given to them by Congress, and they basically are wielding their own power. And that's not what those agencies were meant to do. I'm glad that this talk is in the forefront. Callie Means and Casey Means, if you haven't seen that Tucker Carlson interview, a very good interview about these topics, how we've been captured by big food. And if you look at the history of big food and how it's, really went down, making us sicker, you look at the food companies, and when the tobacco companies were basically, people were educated that tobacco was bad and causing all kinds of problems, the tobacco companies knew that they need to find a new vehicle of Americans to target. So the tobacco companies actually went out and bought a lot of the big food corporations. So I think R.J. Reynolds, don't quote me on this, but you can research it. I think R.J. Reynolds bought Nabisco, for instance. And obviously they had scientists that knew how to make a nicotine delivery device which is obviously nicotine's addicting. And those same scientists moved over to the big food market and also made big food more addicting. Now, I will say this. I don't think there's necessarily a big conspiracy to try to addict us to food at all. I don't think that. Maybe there is. And maybe in a few years I'll rethink this. But do I think that they want to make food less satiating and want you to eat more? Well, sure, because then you would buy more. But I don't think there's necessarily a conspiracy to make us sick from it. But in the end, when we do overeat, we do become metabolically unhealthy. We do get sick. And then what do we need? We need drugs made from big pharma.
Right. Well, if we look at the population in Hong Kong and Japan, I think their lifespans and overall health is better than ours. And it isn't because they don't have McDonald's or Burger King, because they do. It's just that they aren't upsizing to every upsize, and they also move more. Even though they live in cities, they move more. So if we are trying to say that it's just because people are eating out, the problem is how much you're eating out. It's the supersizing of everything and not knowing what sizes should be. And then if we are going to splurge in McDonald's or Burger King, just realize that those calories add up really fast. And that's where, if we come back to eating things straight from the earth, Shawn and I have talked about this many times. Eating an apple makes you more full and I can't personally, I can't remember the last time I've ate a full banana. I can't. It's just something that fills me up really fast. And, banana is high on the index of sugar or glucose index. So our point is that if you find that food isn't doing the work for you, then make healthier choices. Make choices that are going to make you feel full better and longer. And that's part of voting with your pocketbook, because then if their products aren't being sold, they're going to change their strategy. That's always going to happen as the market changes. We have a lot of influence on it. And, there's countries that I know friends have had they've traveled in like Europe, and it's rare that you see as much of the fast food or the snacks being sold. In fact, they usually sell things that are more satisfying in real food. And I think that's what we really need to get back to, is making choices of what's called real food and not just the processed. But that activity part that we talk about is super important, because, if you think about a city like Hong Kong, it's big, it's very populated. But why is it that they are living longer and are thinner than us and healthier? It's because they're moving. So we need to do that. And we've talked about this lately about, rather than getting up and having a snack of food, why don't you get up and move? Because those steps add up, whether it's, walking around the building once or, around the block or something. When you're taking your break, move. That movement adds up and it makes you feel different. And sometimes we eat when we should just be either drinking water or moving.
Yeah, for sure. So last week, speaking of McDonald's, last week I actually went to McDonald's and ordered a quarter pounder with cheese. And I wanted to talk just about this subject, that fast food is not the problem. Let's remember, you guys, McDonald's came out in the 1950s. And when you look at people from the 1950s or 1960s or even 70s, when I grew up, there were no fat people. So it's not about McDonald's necessarily. Now, do people eat regularly at McDonald's more often? Yeah, probably. I think, fast food used to be like a treat. I will tell you that, when Janet and I were growing up, my parents didn't have money to eat out and they knew it was more expensive. So when we did go out, it was to like McDonald's, and it was a treat, like once a year. I'm not kidding you. Usually we'd go when we went school shopping once a year for clothes. We'd go to the McDonald's in Yakima, because Ellensburg, where we lived, did not have one. And my dad would take his trusted pocket knife out and cut my burger in half so I could share it with my brother. So that was part of it back then, is we didn't eat it very often and not definitely multiple times a day or as much. And the super size, like Janet says, even though the burgers have gotten smaller, Big Mac is smaller than it was, 50 years ago or whatever, or whenever it came out. even though those things have gotten smaller, people still supersize and add things on, whether it be, I don't even know the stuff at McDonald's, but whether it be the ice cream or whether it be, their apple pies or whatever it is, people add those things on, supersize and then add on. That's one of the reasons that you want to stay away from fast food, because it's too easy to order more and eat more. That's one of the problems I think we have in today's society in America, is that we don't prepare our food. I was just following a person, the Real Carnivore, on Facebook. She's going to be in our podcast the week of Thanksgiving, actually Wednesday, right before Thanksgiving, and be talking about carnivore. And she was making homemade ice cream. And her thought was, do you think homemade ice cream is more nutritious than broccoli and kale? And of course, most people would say, oh no, ice cream is horrible for you. Well, think about what homemade ice cream has in it. It's got sugar, it's got cream or milk or both, possibly. Mostly cream, right, Janet?
Mm-hmm. But it depends. You can
and it could have some eggs in it. You don't have to put eggs in it. And am I getting it all?
Yeah.
And then
whatever flavor.
And then whatever flavor, vanilla flavor or whatever, strawberries, blueberries, you can put whole fruit in it, whatever. That's bad for you? I don't think it is. Now, if you buy a gallon of it at the store and you eat a gallon of it, and you do that every night, it'd probably be bad for you. But if you've ever made homemade ice cream, even if you do it with a machine that's electric, it takes some time and work. I guarantee you, if you're, sharing that at a family meal after the ice cream is done, I guarantee you're probably not going to make more of it. Anything you have to prepare, you're not going to eat as much of it. And that's why it's important to not buy boxed foods, because it's just easier to throw more in the microwave and eat more of it. Whereas if you got to prepare more, it's like, nah, I'm done. Get it?
Very good point. So I think Shawn and I have touched a little bit on, the diet and exercise, but, inflammation really can be a cause of not sleeping right. And we've talked about that a lot too. And let's face it, no politician's going to fix that one for you. You got to fix it yourself, right? We were just at a conference this weekend, and one of the things that the doctor was talking about is these things, right? We need to turn them off. We need to turn off our computers. We need to get away from technology so our body can relax and we can, get into the zone to be able to sleep. And the other thing that any parent out there will tell you to this day is, especially when you have little ones, get them outside. Go outside. It helps you. Anytime that Shawn and I have spent time outside or part of our day outside, you sleep better. It's just part of who we are as a species. Getting the sunlight and getting the exposure to the outdoors and the weather. And the government can't do that for you, right? You got to do it yourself. You got to make it a priority, because sunlight makes a big difference in weather and just nature in itself. There's many doctors that talk about it in the functional world about, how the sunlight helps stimulate our brains and our body when we wake up, and how when it wanes throughout the rest of the day, it's a signal to us to go to sleep. Well, that's nature. And if we live in that, and be a part of that, I think we can solve a lot of problems without spending a lot of money. It's just making the effort. And the reason we keep hitting home on this is this is all in your control. To me, I don't want to be that individual that doesn't have control of myself. And, it really makes a big difference. I mean, I can't tell you a mother out there that doesn't know if their kid played outside that they're not going to go to bed and sleep harder.
Yeah. And just use yourself as an example too. I mean, the days where, we exercise more or outside more are the days that, you get tired faster and go to and sleep better. Those are just facts. We're made to work or move during the day and sleep at night. Those are just facts too. And back on the subject of diet and exercise. So we talk about movement. Janet talks about that a lot. But you can't exercise your way out of a bad diet. You just can't. I've tried for years and it just doesn't work. You have to constantly be prioritize nutrition over diet. And you got to prioritize sleep over nutrition. We'll die without sleep before we'll die without food. Those are just facts. We can only live about 3 days without sleep, and we can live 3 weeks without food. We are good at storing calories. That's why America is obese, because we have a lot of excess calories, and our bodies, evolutionarily speaking, over generations and generations, was taught to be able to live during fasted times. So between big hunts, when maybe every once a week or twice a week you would get an animal that you could eat. Between those couple days, we would be fasting. That's why we're good at storing fat as an energy source. Fat is a very, very dense energy source, more dense than protein or carbohydrates, more than twice as dense. So very, very concentrated energy source. And so it's important that you move, but also it's more important that you eat appropriately, because you can't exercise your way out of a bad diet ever. Janet?
I agree with that. So the other point we kind of touched on is, if your healthcare provider is not healthy themselves, that's questioning to me. That's something that's important to me. I want to be with somebody who puts health first. I mean, I don't think that they make it a priority for themselves, that they are making it a priority for you. And that's just, if I went to a dentist and his teeth were yellow and crooked, I wouldn't be back, right? We've talked about this, coaches in a gym. If you have somebody, a fitness coach, and they aren't living the walk, I'm sure you're not going to be back. I mean, let's be honest about this. We need to live the part as healthcare professionals. And if you don't see that that's happening, there's a disconnect. And you know what? That's just a reality, right? But I do think that it does bring it to the table. If your healthcare provider knows how to take care of themselves, that they're going to be able to do a better job for you.
And I'm going to go one step further on that. Not only is it important that they're healthy themselves, but their family is. So their spouse and their kids, if they have them, should be healthy too, and walking the walk also, because it's exercise, movement, healthy living is it makes you surround your people. It's I can't think of the word right now. When I'm thinking of the word, Janet, it's contagious.
Yeah,
it's contagious. So when you live a healthy lifestyle, people around you are going to want to live a healthy lifestyle. So, and our goal of this podcast and of our pharmacy since 1998 is to educate and empower individuals to take charge of their own health. So when you do these things, prioritize sleep, when you have a great diet, when you have good movement, you're going to empower yourself to be healthy. You're not going to be disempowered by big pharma. So anybody out there that is on some kind of drug, either for high blood pressure, high cholesterol, that's a whole nother story, by the way. Reflux, type 2 diabetes. If you are on any of those drugs, how disempowering is it that you have to rely on big pharma or the system? Because you got to go to a doctor to prescribe it. You got to go to a pharmacy to get it. There's a drug company that makes it for you. They are literally controlling you. I don't know about you guys, but just like Janice says, I like to be liberated from most everything. I want to make those choices myself. And I would not want to be relying on a drug that I don't absolutely necessarily need if I change my lifestyle. So that's our goal of our podcast, is to educate and empower you to take charge of your own health. And for most chronic diseases, they are lifestyle related. I know that's not what we're taught, but that is absolutely the fact. Psoriasis, ulcerative colitis, any kind of gut disease, whether it be IBS, irritable bowel, or, Crohn's, all those things can be reversed or controlled by changing your diet. You don't need fancy drugs.
Which also means that you are in control. And like our friend Robbie, I'll quote her again, you're never too late to make change. And changes can be slow. I mean, you don't have to, I've had people that said they cleaned out their pantry. That's fine. Just don't buy it the next time. Just make small changes. And really, I think what we've let politicians tell us is that we got to have these things to survive. Well, humans have been here for a long time without big pharma, and we had remedies that our grandmothers passed down. If we're flu, the chicken soup, sleep, rest, all the natural things. So, let's get our immune system by doing their healthy things without having to rely on a big company to do that for us. And, we realize they're still going to be there even after the election.
Yeah.
We realize that. But what we're really trying to promote is that since it's your body and you have skin in the game, you make the choices and the decisions and make the ones that are best for you. And how you do it is by doing things on your day-to-day basis, on your day-to-day choices and decisions that you make. So do the best you can with what you've got, and don't let somebody else control you. I think that's one of the great things about our country is our thought process of freedom is still, we're in control of our own bodies.
Yeah, and that alone is empowering. Let me tell you, when you start making changes, and we've seen it over and over again with patients when, they're on 5, 6, 10 different medications, and all of a sudden they make these lifestyle changes and they're not on any medications anymore. Talk about how empowering is that you're not going to let drug companies or the healthcare system control you again. And realize you're talking to two pharmacists. You're talking to two pharmacists that don't believe in drugs to treat long-term disease. That is very, very powerful. And Jan and I absolutely believe it is our purpose on this earth and is our passion to educate people about that drugs are not the answer for most chronic diseases.
So we're not telling you how to vote. That's not the purpose of this. And we've had people say, oh, you don't want to talk about politics, but really you kind of have to talk about it a little bit, about what your choices are can be dictated by who's in office. But the big choices that we have every single day, we are empowered to make in our own life, in our own walk. So don't feel bummed about whatever direction it goes, because that's not the end of all of us, right? We make decisions every single day about how we want to live our life and be empowered with that. And I think that makes a big difference in how we feel mentally and emotionally too, is that we do have the power to do things in our own life on a day-to-day basis.
And just to expand on that, is that really in a free country, in a free society, politicians don't matter. Doesn't matter who's president, doesn't matter who's in Congress, doesn't matter who even the judges are. I'm not saying we don't need that system, because we do, but in a true free country where free market principles are the most common thing, instead of too much government regulation, then the government doesn't really matter. Then individuals are free to make their own choices, and that's what we want to teach you, is that you are in your health. You are empowered. You just have to understand that and realize that most people in the traditional healthcare system, Janet hates that term traditional because we've gotten away from it. But most people in the healthcare system today, they're not going to tell you these things. They're going to tell you what drug is great for you. I mean, find a pharmacist out there. Find a pharmacist out there that doesn't think that drugs are the answer to high blood pressure or diabetes. They all do. I've got friends. I've got colleagues. That's what they do. And it makes Janet and I just pull our hair out. But, that's what they've been indoctrinated on. So that's what they know. So we want to make sure that you know different. So Tuesday is a big day. Go out and vote. We're not telling you how to vote. I vote for liberty. That's what I vote for, because the more liberty I can have and the less the politician does with me and my family, the happier I am. And I think everybody would be better off that way. So thank you for tuning in to Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham. Tune in Thursday to our midweek podcast, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Thank you all for listening.